Jeff,
Yes,
Jeffrey, may I pick on you for a bit?
sure, by all means.
Good. See, the reason why is because my complex is suffering a bit from a bad tooth, and I'm not sure if it's going to need to be, canaled or pulled or whatever the case is, but it's bugging the left side of my head right now, and um, frankly, causing a bit of a distraction. So, what I need from you, if
Hmm.
you're willing to do so, is to be a bit more of a prompter today
Okay.
and prompting questions, primarily related around the three gem stations that we're working into, or prompting observations, or um, yeah, responses, that sort of thing. So I'm going to make this more your show today, if you're willing to do it.
Okay, we'll give it a
Yeah.
shot.
Right.
All
So
right. So just go. Sure. Well, all right. Thanks everyone for coming today. Turn it
good
right
way to
on.
start. Good way to
Okay.
start. Hmm. All right. The next line is, you're probably wondering why I've invited you all here.
Okay. You're probably wondering why I've invited you all here.
Yes, we are. Yes, we
And
are.
this is a
Yes, we
pop
are.
quiz on the three gem stations. So pull out a
Right.
paper and pen. No.
I got it. I got it.
Uh, okay. So we look, well, rather than just pulling it out, I mean, I guess I'm just trying to also see the format that you're going for, but I do have maybe a conversation starter if that works.
Your show for the time being.
Totally
Okay.
leaving. Okay. All right. Mhm.
I never promised not to put someone on the spot, did I?
Nope, and that's fine. Just, but I am on the spot, and I am trying to like call it over.
Yeah, right.
I don't mind the position. I just gotta.
Here's
Pull it in.
can I give you a bit of hard-earned wisdom in that regard?
Sure.
Let go. Anytime in the past when I have diligently tried to plan a lesson, and this is the points that I want to talk about, and so on and so forth, it's generally an utter flop.
Hmm.
Right? What's required in a situation like this is to be able to just acknowledge your own humanity, acknowledge what that means, that you are a processing machine, and then let go and see what wants to come and have a play. Yeah. Because it's like I've said before, this is not a teacher student type of relationship, and this certainly
Hmm.
isn't a classroom. Yeah. Your classroom's out there. It's in life. That's where you um, experience a classroom, because this is an experiment and an experience. See,
Hmm.
so see if you can get out of your own way
All right.
and touch that which is flowing through you. I'm sure, being a diligent listener as you are, you've probably been forecasting for meetings in what you're hoping to get out of them, yeah,
Mhm.
before you sit down.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. Run with it.
All right. Well, I've
And
been
we're all friends
pondering.
here. Okay.
Yes.
We're all
Yes.
friends here. No worries.
Well, I've been pondering, and I want to see what's alive for people in this area. And I'm just pulling it up. So I was reading into the gem station diamond this morning, and pondering the levels. Right, the world of the divine,
Uh-huh.
the world of thought creation, the world of astral formation, and the world of physical manifestation.
Right. Now pause there for a second, because some of the more the people who are a bit further along are going to be a bit confused, because I changed the wording in that lesson as of yesterday. Okay, so not a lot of changes, but I think it's more succinct. So yes, the world of the divine, the world of thought creation, the world of astral formation, and physical manifestation. Is that right? Is that what you have in front of you?
Yes.
Very good. Okay, keep going.
All right. And been thinking about this. So containments
Hmm.
and how it kind of comes down, gets from a wider to more narrow. So,
Mhm.
in other words, everything is inclusive in the world of the divine. And then there's the world of thought creation, which is perhaps a subset of the divine. And the world of the astral formation, a subset of the thought creation and the divine. And then the world of physical manifestation being a subset of the astral formation, thought creation, and the divine. So, an example in the paper is the idea that, well, that something like, say, your chair,
Hmm.
right, exists as an astral formation and a physical manifestation. But there's also astral formations that do not manifest physically.
Right.
So, I've had to ponder, and at the moment, at this stage, it's a ponder. I don't have a knowing yet about that, but that it's kind of like it's a funneling down. So from a wider to a narrower cone.
Yeah. Can I tell you a secret about that?
Sure.
It's a funneling down only from our universe, our
Mm.
perspective, or I should say from our vantage point of existence. What I mean by that is that if you think of the divine, that aspect starting at that, the topmost world there, it's really just will, W-I-L-L, will. Okay, that's the prime nature of that realm of creation, or it's not even creation at that point in time. It's just pure will, you see. And when it enters the world of thought creation, it's thoughts without imagery. Okay, it's if you've ever had what they call, see, I can't sit still. My lady knows this. If you've ever had this eureka moment, and most people have this epiphany, yeah, there's a moment just before you have that epiphany that is thought without words, thought without, it's pure thought. It's almost like you sense it coming, but you cannot yet articulate it. Yeah, there's that moment. That's what that world is like, in its entirety, right? And then you're right. It comes down from our perspective, it comes down to the world of astral formation, which is when it begins to take on an electrical embodiment. You probably used to, many of you have been told that color is the first cloak of force. It's not entirely true. The first cloak is actually that thought that we were talking about. In the astral domains is when it begins to take on this nature of form, color, shape, electrical presence, right? Electromagnetics. And this is where you begin to feel it. Yeah, that sort of thing. Now, most of the things, and many of the things, I should say, that are in astral form are like seeds. What I mean by that is, astrally speaking, on a very minuscule scale, though. Okay. By the way, the smaller something is, the more potent it is. All right. But ladies, you're born with what I think it is 100 million eggs, right? Ovum, something like that. Yeah. Each of those represent a potential life. or even a potential civilization. Yeah, 100 million people is quite the civilization, isn't it? You carry that essence astrally with you throughout the entirety of your life. Sometimes one of those manifests into physical reality. Most of the time, they don't, you see. Does that make sense? As an analogy, it's not the science of how it works, but it is analogous to it, of all of the things that exist in the astral domain, that some of which become a physical reality. Now, leaving the ovum aside and going back up to the will, the thought, and the astral, you might begin to see that other galaxies have those other potentials as manifested. Yeah, thoughts that never even show up in this galaxy are showing up as astral forms and entitized. That's the wrong word, because entitized is an astral function, physicalized in another galaxy. Carry on.
Okay.
You're on the right track.
Sure. A note where I recognize this process is in the moments of waking up from sleep. So and I'm not talking about getting jarred up for something, but just in a natural process, I find that that there's a sensation, and then oftentimes I have an idea or kind of a detection on the day for me before I'm ever fully coherent.
Yeah.
And then when I can, I try to lay there for a little while and see what wants to, manifest in thought form. And then in some cases, I'll make an effort to manifest it for the day if there's something to do. Like yesterday, I woke up and I had something to write, so I did.
Right.
Now, first, actually, I'd rather pause there and just see if anyone wants to say anything on that.
Tough crowd.
Yeah.
Okay.
Awesome.
I want to say something. You said when you woke up, you think about some project to work on in the day, but most of the times I usually woke up with a sense of uh, stress or fear. I don't know why, but most of the days I have when I open my eyes, the first thing I feel is a kind of fear, a kind of a stress that am I doing right, or what should I do? I don't know why.
Okay. So I recognize this as well. And because I do get that. In fact, I find that I wake up in the middle of the night with that. And in hearing you, or at least as a process I've been through with it, sometimes I have to do the detection, right? Is it something in me, something in my life that I can kind of find and isolate, right? Because it could be the mind going through a problem. And other times I find, and particularly these days, right? So we talk about the astral light. And we look, I think it's fairly evident that there's some great changes going on the planet right now. And for humans, as a collective species, it's a lot of unknowns, right? That could be frightening. And one of the detections I've had is, when I kind of do an inventory, when I wake up with that anxiety and I do an inventory, and I go, is there anything in my world? Is this going wrong? Is something at work? Something. And if I can't find something or detect something in my body about it, as terms of like something that really does address my personal experience in life, my best detection is I'm picking up in the astral light of what's going on and the collective uncertainties.
I think that's right. Yeah, I'm going to chime in with something here. I think that's right. when you first wake up in the morning, well, let's put it this way. When you go to sleep at night, part of the brain's process is to, throughout the day, it collects various bits, okay? Constantly collecting things, all right? And that's its food. That's how it eats, yeah? The electrical life of the brain eats that way. Now, just like physically, when you eat and you excrete, right? You do this also from a memory standpoint, okay? So the things that you eat physically that can't go to supporting this body of yours, this complex of yours, are eliminated, right? And we know the process. The same thing happens in the realms of dreaming, okay? Except because the mind itself, the mental life, I should say, it doesn't work the way the body does. It has externalized its digestive system. All right. If you can imagine a creature that gathers food and then sticks it somewhere else while it digests, right, and then comes back for it. So that's similar to what the mental life does. And the way that it does this is by giving it astral form. Right? It puts it out into the astral light of the planet, and then these various things play a role. They play against each other, and they create scenes, and they digest one another. Right? It's different things digesting one another. When you wake up in the morning, only what's left, only what's necessary for you, is what remains. And this is why most people quickly forget their dreams, right? Because it's not relevant anymore. Now, when you first wake up, however, you don't wake up all at once. All right. The first thing to wake up is your higher mentality aspect. The second thing to wake up is your higher emotional life. The third to wake up is your physical, sexual life, creativity, and so on and so forth. Also procreative, right? Then your emotional center, and your instinctive, moving, and the last thing to wake up is your thinking center. Okay, so you wake up, you go to sleep in the opposite way, right? You start to get tired, and your brain shuts down. Your thinking center says no more, right? And then your moving center, you release a chemical in your body that keeps you from flailing around all night. Okay, then your instinctive center shuts down, except for its primary function, which is heartbeat and respiration, yeah, and various other little tasks. But you're no longer aware of dangers, yeah. Then your emotional center, then your sexual center, then your higher emotional and higher thinking center. So it's kind of like this. You go through this rainbow spectrum of waking up and going to sleep. But when you first wake up, you're still very sensitive to the astral light all around you. Yeah. And so getting these types of impressions, whether they're coming from your own life or from someone else's life, or even from the bank of force that's just connected to this idea of fear itself, you're going to be sensitive to it. And so what Jeffrey is saying is true. It's important to run a quick detection against yourself, to ask yourself, is this me? Is this in me, right? Or is this outside? Is this some other external influence? And if you recognize that it's something in you, yeah, because of something you're going through, then you know the path to address it, and you can work on that. If you sense that it's actually not you, but connected to just the astral light of what's going on in the planet at the time, at this stage, I should say, there's very little you can do about that other than to recognize it and let it go. All right. In later stages, you can actually perform a service to the planet and a service to humanity by injecting something into that which will counteract it. Okay, but that's like a little ways down the line. Yeah. All right. There's my bit. Jeffrey, please continue.
Very interesting. Thank you.
Yes. Actually, you know what, if you don't mind, I just want to add to that bit, because I've been in contemplation, not more than contemplation than that, actually. It's kind of taking a position. That, when I look at the affairs, and if we get caught into, particularly here in the US, there's this side and that side, and, the various levels of arguments going on, and you kind of wonder, what can I do? But doesn't matter what country, I'm sure it's going on all over in one form or another. And it come down to is that we could start making impressions into the astral light. So just as all that is feeding the astral light, we can also basically, in my mind, it shows up as a vote. What do I stand for? What do I vote for?
Hmm.
And that's become a conscious process for me. Whenever
I need to correct something, if I may. Okay.
Sure.
Yes, to a point. It should be a conscious process to a point. But in order to actually influence the astral light itself, you need to have emotion with it. You absolutely have to project an emotion, right? Emotion has to go through and follow that mental course with it. So, you know, back in the 60s, there was this book called Think and Grow Rich. Yeah. And I can't remember who the author is, but it was caught on like wildfire. The latest craze. I'm sorry?
Napoleon Hill.
Napoleon Hill, you're right. You know, and then back in the 80s, 90s, whatever it was, you get this similar kind of trend with the Jay-Z night down the rabbit hole, you know, willing things into existence. And they're missing some of these key ingredients. They're missing the emotional aspect. It actually won't happen if you just sit there and think it through, right? You have to give it astral form. In lesson 7, by the way, you will learn how to give something astral form and to entitize it. So you're not far off, none of you, yeah, any of you, but just a minor course correction there.
Sure.
That it has to be an emotional response.
Okay, and I'd like to, kind of qualify that a bit, because as I process that, right, there's an emotional response that is, that I see in people that's like, oh my God, the sky's falling, we've got to do this, do that. And I see an absence of potency in that, distinct from what I refer to as a passion, something that's more of a quiet force. So would you, Pierce, would you say that there's a difference in those degrees?
Well, yes, but the difference is going back to this idea of the cone, that things at the bottom of the cone. See, we're talking about different cones now, right?
Yes.
We have manifestation, which is the idea of creation.
Yeah.
Then we have the one of evolution, which goes this way. Okay, so down in the kind of yeah, sure, right.
Yeah.
Down in the general fray of things, right, at the lower ends of the astral light. Not very powerful, but lots of it, tons and tons and tons of it, right? But it's like they say that, and please don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that sunlight is a level 7 thing. It's not. But they say that tons and tons and tons of sunlight fall on the planet every day, right? And yet you can't go scoop it up. Yeah, that's kind of what level 7 is, right? It's just tons and tons and tons of it, but very difficult to get a hold of. Yeah. If you wanted to put it in scientific terms, it'd be like 1 part per billion. The rest is just the etheric layer that holds it, the astral light itself, you see, content. As you move up the bar, then you begin to get more and more and more potent, but there's less of it. Now, I'll give you an example of how this works. Let us say that you have this pit, giant pit, okay? And in the pit are an endless number of prisoners. And it only costs 2 cents, 2 pennies, right? 2 bits to get out of the pit. But remember, there's an infinite number of them down there, right? And so if you take pennies and just start doing this, no one will ever get out. You know why? Because it's going to distribute evenly among infinity. You see, so you can spend billions upon billions upon billions of dollars worth of pennies, and it will have no result. Yeah. Now, other scenarios, if there are a finite number of people in there, then eventually people will start getting, 2 pennies and start popping out. Yeah. If there are infinite people down there, but you start throwing dollars at a time, right? Then people are buying themselves out and 80 other friends, you see, all at the same time, because it's punch. It's got more punch to it, even if it's less. Okay, you understand the analogy? It's kind of a rough one, but it explains this idea of the potency of the higher levels of the astral light. Now, let's do this. Let's talk more about the astral light. All right. Let's fill it in for ourselves. From a human process standpoint, and I probably won't get to 7, will I? We'll see. Yes, I did. Right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All right, cool. From a human processing standpoint, what lives here in level 7? We'll say this is the lowest level of the astral light. What lives there? Give me one word that sums it up. So this is something I was recently on about. Is this okay with you, Jeffrey?
Sure.
Okay.
Yep.
It's your meeting. I'm just
it's all good. It's all good. It's conversational and instructional and all that. So and I'll give you the word too, decay.
Decay. How did you know that?
I think we've spoken about it before, actually.
Okay. Well done. Decay. Yeah. Now, looks terrible. I don't mind it. It's decay. Doesn't have to look good. That one decayed on me. What does it, what does that mean from a planetary standpoint first? What does that mean from a planetary standpoint? Is it evil? No. You're right. It's not evil, right? Because if things didn't decay, we would be up to our eyebrows in garbage. And every time you throw a banana peel in the trash, it just stays there for all of eternity. You see, it never gets reused. In fact, we would be out of bananas before too long because there'd be no molecules and cells and things left to go make new ones, right? And so that is a planetary process. Humans, however, are not planetary. Our body is, okay, and things about our body decays, okay, which is natural, right? Humans start here. This is the natural home, the natural center of gravity for humans, right there at 4. Okay, but let's continue this process. What's the next one up called from a human standpoint?
Would that be biological, like just living?
Not quite yet.
Would you say just a cell, just one cell, or a collection of cells?
Let's do this from a human psychology standpoint, because what happens down here when a person is, they can't actually be centered here. They have to be centered here. But when a person engages at the level of decay, we call it decadent behavior. Yeah. And you're talking about like the lowest expression of possible psychologies for a human. Okay. Decadent. And it's funny, right? Our society is very funny because, we describe things like chocolate as decadent. God, I hope not. Right? If you're having a decadent chocolate cake, I think there's something wrong with that word, isn't there?
Mm.
Yeah. Why would you put that in your mouth? We misuse language. Anyway, so let's stick to, we can go over the planetary aspects of this. I'll tell you, a dog sits here at 6 naturally as its station, right? The reason why I say that is because having had dogs and observing their behavior, they like to destroy everything. Okay, it is their fundamental nature that if there is something out in the yard that they're not supposed to eat, like our chair cushions, they will go destroy it and try to break it down into as small little pieces as they possibly can. Right? They do this with bones. They do this with sticks. They do this with sprinkler systems. Right? They do it with all kinds of things because it's primarily their job to help nature break something down small enough to where it can decay. You see? So nothing wrong with that. Maybe quite irritating to us, but there's nothing wrong with it from a standpoint of being a dog. That's why they're here, right? It's one of the reasons. Yeah. But here, how does it show up? How does a level 6 show up in the human? What is a level 6 expression in the human?
I'm going to say automatic function.
Give me one word.
Okay, one word.
Yeah.
Respiration.
I'm thinking more from a psychology standpoint, not a biology.
Is it instinctive?
No, that's actually a little higher. Instinctive is. I'll help you out with this one. Okay. Lust.
Okay.
When a dog does it, they're not lusting. When a human lives in level 6, it's called lust. Yeah. And it shows up with things like greed, right? Lusting after things, lusting after money, lusting after the opposite sex or the same sex, lusting after. It's always more. Yeah, they can never get enough. This is the idea here. And again, being level 4 beings, we're not meant to ever even touch that aspect of things. The idea of gimme should never cross our mentality, except when you're a baby. And the reason why I say that is because we talked about this downward, creation goes this way and then evolution goes this way. Yes. Well, a baby starts in a natural process of 7 and then goes 6, 5, 4 very rapidly. Okay. So when they go through the phase of grabbing things from people and getting that kind of possessiveness, which children do, it's actually natural. It's just part of their psychology leveling out to 4, where it should be as a human being. Okay, so not evil, not lust in that case. But for an adult like you and I, shouldn't really be there. Yeah. Even from a sexual standpoint with your partner, if it's lust, it's possessiveness. Yeah. I hope you all understand that if you're in a relationship and a partner ever comes to you and says, this isn't working for me, that you should very much let go. Yeah. Because I'm not saying you all, this is also being recorded. Okay. Because anything short of that, and we'll talk about that angel too in a minute, but anything short of that is subpar for what you are as a human. Yeah. It's attaching to something that doesn't belong to you. Okay. So lust. Now, 5. I almost wrote it. You almost tricked me. What do you suppose that is? Now we're talking into something that a human can and should be influenced by psychologically. And Sachin, I think you touched on it in part.
Yeah, I when I said instinct, I was trying to put one word to it. And
Yeah.
it's just, I think you were. I think the 6 below, in my mind, that's more about living in a very world of the senses, right? Where your food and the way you live is by all the physical, material, audible, visual things. One level above is 5, which is what you're talking about. So yeah,
Yeah.
we're still 6. So 5, in my mind, so that would be a more spiritual, or I'm using that word.
Not
It
quite
is
yet.
more spiritual, not all the way spiritual. Right? A little bit more, with not necessarily off the senses, although off the senses is a part of it, but a little bit more where you're looking at a little bit of a deeper meaning in those. And again, I don't have one word for it, and I'm not even going to try to do one word this time.
You are definitely dancing around the territory, so I'll give you the word. survival. Let's finish that A. Survival. Okay. Now we can begin to talk about something, because you can't be, as a human, you literally cannot be based here. Lowest you can be based is here. And now, but what happens in response to something, wherever your center of gravity is, sometimes you'll touch something higher, sometimes you'll touch something lower. Most of the time you'll be in the middle. Yeah. You'll spend the majority of time in the middle, with peaking and crest and troughing through the other two that surround it. Okay, so let's talk about this for a moment. Someone who is based here in level 6, this is what their life looks like. More most of the time. Okay, oh, you know, that woman's so sexy, and oh, I wish I had that Lamborghini, and you know, like, that's the general sense of things. Sometimes naturally they're going to have to go into a human function and just do survival things, right? Take a shower, clean up, eat, all the things, you know, that are just basic survival, but never anything higher than that usually, right? Unless they're evolving, which hopefully they are. But the other times they drop down into such decadent behaviors, right? Where they actually will, because of their lust, will do things that are subhuman. They will steal. They will trample. They will rape. All right? They will fall into those things because they're not fulfilling their prime center of gravity, which is lust, you see. So we oscillate. This is why it's important to be at 4. Okay? What's beyond that? 4. Now we're talking about the central aspect.
Thought?
Yeah. Thought's here. Do you see?
Okay.
The reason why thought is here,
Yeah.
is because it's intellectual. It's dry. There's nothing wrong with it. Okay, if your center of gravity is based around lust, based around 6, you'll never really hit the high points of what 5 would be, because they're closer to 4. You see, but if you're at 4, when you're dropping down into 5, you're going to have things like intellectualism. Not intellectualism from a negative standpoint, like oh, yeah, blah, 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 but intellectual of like thinking, right? Your mental processes, you see, exist there. Here, and this will give you a huge clue once we fill this one in, huge clue as to why humans are here to begin with. What's above survival?
Growing, maybe. Evolution. Growing.
That's actually above that. We'll get there in a minute. You're right. We'll get there in a minute.
Would you say above survival is control, or again, I'm just using that?
Hey, that's still there. Yeah. Sachin, something you practice has very much to do with it. One of your practices. It's healing, ladies and gentlemen. Healing.
Is it personal healing, or is it when you
All
say
manner. All manner, right? Because you know darn well you can't be a healer to others if you're not healthy yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Healing, mental healing, emotional healing, physical healing, planetary healing. You see, we're in this respect, we're higher than the planet because we have the ability to heal the astral light of the planet. Yeah, but that is the true station of human, is everything to do with healing. Now, sometimes you'll drop down into survival, right? Like you do. I'm sure you had breakfast and brushed your teeth this morning and things like that. Yeah, hopefully. I guess now that we're doing video conferences, you don't have to brush your teeth, but yeah. It's a joke, okay? But yeah, anything to do with healing. Now, you touched on, Mahsad, I think you touched on the next one up. which is what?
Growing.
Yeah. Evolving. So, the general station of human should be in this realm here. Healing as a fundamental purpose or fundamental way, yeah. Evolving and surviving. Someone who is in a survival mindset will sometimes touch healing, usually only to do with self. Right? Their main goal is just to get by. Sometimes that means, they look at their life and they think, yeah, I should probably, lose weight or go see a psychologist or do whatever the case is. Yeah. And they will touch into that healing side of things, but the lower end of it. Yeah. And sometimes down into lust. You see, this is where you're going to find probably 95% of all humanity is here, survival mode. They're not your bad people, they'll still catcall random ladies on the street and all that, right? Which is not good behavior, really, for a gentleman to do. And they'll take care of themselves here and there, right? But it's not the station of human. Evolving in survival based in healing of oneself. Now, the idea is wherever you find yourself to try and get higher and higher and higher. I'm going to guess that these two are probably outside of your current experience, right? And this is nothing negative intended by that. So if you don't mind, I'll fill in what the other two should be. Okay. This would be connected. And this would be divinity. Connected. What does that mean? That means that you are connected to the influence that informs creation and evolution itself. You see, and it is possible to be based here as a human. You can be based here. You can't be based here, just like you can't be based here, but you can be based at connection, connecting. Yeah. And when you are, then your moments touch divinity, and your high moments touch divinity, and your low moments touch your evolutionary thread. Yeah. So, right. I mean, it's up to each person to decide. I generally think someone in this level here would never be attracted to this work, most likely. Yeah. So we're not going to see many of those. A lot of people here will be, because we do offer a tremendous amount of healing in this work. Yeah. But the idea is to kind of climb the ladder, isn't it? Up to the connecting, leading to connected. Connected. All right. Was that a acceptable run, Jeffrey?
Sure.
Still your meeting, okay?
Okay. Very good.
You're going to stop believing me in a moment, aren't you?
What's
Can
that?
I ask something?
Sure, Masa.
I think at the stage of healing, at the stage of survival, we have still ego or egoistic desires. But do you think at healing, ego is diminished?
What do you think, Jeffrey?
Diminished, yes. Presence, yes. I guess.
What do you mean?
All right. So let me define ego as I think about it, right? So the ego isn't a bad thing, right? A natural ego, the way I define it, is it's the thing that, like, if you're crossing a street and a car is coming, you get out of the way. So that's in survival, of course. In healing, I think the ego's still present, right? Now I'm guessing. The ego is still present, but you're receptive to other than ego.
Yeah. You're spot on that ego is a fundamental aspect of things. The problem is that what most people call ego really isn't that. Okay. Up to a certain point in your childhood, you collect layers and layers and layers of personality, which is what most people call ego. All right. You learn to speak like perhaps your parents, and you learn to think like your teachers, and you learn to emote like whatever. You know what I'm saying? You gather these bits of how is this life supposed to behave on this planet? Yeah. Now, most people think that that's ego. It's not. It's personality.
Mm.
The difference is that ego, as the name implies, ego is something in motion. It's something moving, okay? And a stage of development, a stage of personal development, has to do with taking all of this fluff that's your personality and alchemizing it, breaking it down into an ego that can take you somewhere. It's not making sense yet, is it? You understand your personality should be a fuel, not not the end result. Yeah. People, we even call them famous personalities. That's what they do. They just continue to stack on the fuel without ever propelling the rocket anywhere. It's a stationary rocket with more and more and more fuel added to it. We won't go into the process of how to break that down, but an ego is actually a very good thing. It brings you to God. Yeah, it's what pushes you up to God. It's the same as the yoke and what's that strange word called? I'll know it when I hear it. Anyway, the clear part. Yeah, in an egg. The clear part of an egg. Nah, that piece of chalk doesn't like. Okay. The clear part of an egg is the personality. The yolk, the middle, is the essence. Now, what happens in the case of a chicken is that to become a chick, to become born, it eats this, doesn't it? Not only sends it as a protection, but the more that it eats this, the more it can grow on the inside until it's ready to peck its way out and emerge as something that doesn't look anything like yolk. Yeah. If you were a stranger to this planet and you didn't have the concept of eggs on the planet that you came from, and you scooped out a piece of yolk, someone scooped out a piece of yolk and set it in front of you, and a chicken and set it in front of you, and asked you, what do these two things have in common? You'd probably say nothing. Right? They have nothing in common. Unrecognizable, the initiator from the results. But the idea is the same thing. Your personality, you spend time developing your personality as this kind of fuel around here. At some point in time, if you're an evolving person, in other words, if you're at least stationed in 4 and tap into that, some of that evolution has to do with consuming that by questioning yourself. Why do I really believe this? Yeah, there are so many things that we're taught to believe, even about ourselves, that part of that process of destroying the personality to form an ego is to get rid of the contradictions that we so comfortably live with about ourselves and about the knowledge that we think we hold. Okay, so ego and personality are different things. Ego will take you all the way to God, as the name implies. Yeah, E, which in the Alpha Curio bet is of God to God or serving a godly purpose. Yeah, and then go. If you want to break it down further, go having to do with the rebirth aspect, and O, or G, I should say, having to do with rebirth, and O having to do with the planetary condition in which you find that process occurring. So don't lose your egos.
Yeah. Actually, can't help but, there's the anagram, of course, is Geo
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Okay. Handing the mic back to you for maybe another 5-10 minutes. Okay.
10 minutes. Okay. So looking at that, the upward triangle there, because there's also a part of this, shifting back, just calling over again the divine thought creation, astral formation, and physical manifestation. I also, looking at this diagram, but particularly the Star of David, as above, so below.
Right.
So start thinking about the fractals and basically what's in us from that is a what's the word I'm looking for? Analogy of the divine. So
can you use the word correspondence instead of analogy?
Yes, I was searching for a more accurate word. Yeah, corresponding. That is this a mirror? Is this a reflection? Right. There's what's top in one
Perfect. Yes, you're right.
is bottom on another point of view.
Keep going. Yes. Keep running with that. I'm just going to draw something up on the board.
Okay. So what's one way for us, just taking an example of, like, let's say you have a person at the top of a building and a person at the street level. So the person at the street level might be looking up and saying, hey, that's really big. And the person at the top of the building be looking down and say, hey, that person's really small. It's the same building and the same person.
I like that.
So again, pondering, what does the human look like from a perspective of the divine? What is the human processing looking up the ray of the divine? And then in that, if we take the ruby, the star sapphire, and the diamond, right, recognizing that aspect in ourselves as a piece of that divine. Did I say anything in there that needs a little explaining in terms of the as above, so below? That clear to everyone?
Okay. Let me run now.
Okay.
So here's your gem rod. Okay. It starts with diamond, star ruby, star sapphire, amethyst, ruby, topaz, emerald, opal, quartz, granite. Not the gem rod of the 1980s, 90s, but the gem rod. Okay. Let me explain something before I go into that, because this is a universal gem rod. This is the gem rod of the ray of creation. And you might say, wait a minute, Pierce, the ray of creation only has 7 notes. And a completion, right? So you can say 8. Well, there's also 2 shocks in there, which should give you a clue that the universal gem rod includes 2 shock gem stations, okay? But anyway, that's not my point. My point is that in the physical realms, you can say all of this appears somewhere in the world of manifestation, okay? The world of physical manifestation, wherein diamond having to do with a particular form of will, right? Unmanifest, you decide that you're going to do something, yeah? Star ruby is the thrust into it. Star sapphire is the boundaries that you keep about it to be able to, make it happen. And since none of you are there yet, I'm not going to tell you what all the rest of them are, but this is when it actually appears, right? This is the vehicle you drive. Granted, I'm talking about the vehicle you drive, the life you live, the body you have, and so on and so forth. It's everything that has a physical substance to it. Okay. Now, this is just the physical world. But diamond is the granite of the astral. You see? So if we could draw a ginormous gem rod going up 4 octaves, so 40 gem stations, then that's what it would really look like. And truth be told, in the astral realms, the gem stations that Leo talked about are more like those. You see, in the astral and some in the Leo was picking and choosing from different octaves of this, okay, to come up with these. But in any event, do you understand the idea of this 40 foot tall gem rod that is creation? Yeah, this is physical. Everything has a physical manifestation in this one, but the next one up is astral, and it begins where diamond leaves off as granite. Yeah, and then the next one up is thought, which begins where diamond in the astral leaves off as granite, and so on and so forth. All right. So that's that. You're absolutely right. This is an as above, so below kind of condition. Yeah, dealing with 4 worlds at a time. Now, the higher can always see the lower, and I will be wrapping up soon, but the higher can always see the lower, but the lower cannot always see the higher. Because like you began this with, everything that you see around you, everything in the physical universe has an astral counterpart. In other words, a form, an electrical form that attends it, has a thought creation aspect, which would be the preformed thought of something, and a divine willed aspect to it. Everything you see. But sometimes, especially when you're talking about just local galaxies and not all of them, sometimes a will never makes it down to, sometimes a will make it all the way down to the astral, yeah, a certain will of the divine, but never find physical expression here. Okay, so the higher can see the lower, but the lower can't always see the higher. Yeah. And this is to do with coarse and fine and all the things that you have already been exposed to many times. Yeah. All right, quick sum up. Let's find out where this leaves you. Jeffrey, thank you for your assistance today.
Sure.
Yeah, wrap things up for us. He did a great job, didn't he? Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Not easy shining the spotlight on somebody.
That's right. Yep. And I'm just pausing like to wrap it up.
Yeah.
Yeah. For me, it leaves me in again, ponder about scale. And the scale, this often comes up in our conversations, the scale, the accurate scale of the human.
Mm.
One of the things that triggers me to that, right? These sayings, we just throw the language around. Say we have to save the planet, for example. We can't, right? Mm. There are actions that we're in control over, but the planet is a whole different scale than the human.
Right.
The solar system is a different scale than the human, and so forth. So, and I'm, taking aside the behavioral patterns of that save the planet, but more like the concept. Can any of us truly rescue a planet? So that, I think that's the part, when I look at it, it's like the scale of the human. It's like a hologram, right? We have the diamond, the star sapphire, and the ruby within, and it's a connection up. But also, I think also with it, I really am just kind of saying limitations, right? Is that, I don't know what I mean by that in this context, but the limitations of the human design.
Let me throw another bit in there, because it's limitations of perspective. That's all. You can't change it from within it, right? You can't change the planet from within the planet, but if you are outside of it, and if you can get high enough up the ray of creation to influence the thought patterns that go into the astral forms that eventually demonstrate physical reality, that might be. And, like we talked about last time, you have embodiments in all of these dimensions. It's a matter of coming into touch with them, though.
So has that been done in human history?
Yeah, but it takes a long time, you see. That's the problem. Because now you're talking about time scales, not just physical scales.
Do you mean intentions by thought patterns?
Repeat that, please.
Do you mean intentions by saying thought patterns?
Yeah, kind of. Kind of. Intention is somewhere between will and thought. A journey without intention is ambition, right? Leo used to say.
You would need a potency that is not commonly present.
Yeah, right. It's a shift. I've always said this. Your ability to evolve isn't, I mean, I know I said climbing the ladder, but it was an analogy, right? Your ability to evolve is not doing this, it's doing this. Shifting your focus, shifting your perspective on things. Yeah, taking a sidestep into the reality of your choosing. In Mahazad, it's true, right? You can manifest something in your life as long as you're clear on what your will is about it. You're clear on your thought patterns about it, and you know how to emote towards it to create an astral form of it. You know, if it's within the permissions of the planet, you'll have it. Yeah, you'll have it. Okay. All right. Let's close out. Yeah.
Okay.
Was it okay? I think you did brilliant.
Sure.
Yeah?
Thank you.
Good. All right. Well, thank you all so much, and see most, if not all of you tomorrow.